Perfect. Well, welcome. I'm Brian Ferrell, the owner of Factor 110 Destination Oklahoma and 110 Events, and I'm also a past president of the Association of Destination Management Executives International, or ADME, who represents our DMC side of our industry. And it's a very exciting day when we get to bring together our industry here in Oklahoma, whether we meet in person or on this platform today. Any day that we get to come together as peers, colleagues, and friends is a great day in my books. So I'm grateful for the SGMP Oklahoma chapter for leading the efforts and providing this forum for an Oklahoma event and hospitality industry update. I'm joined today by a distinguished group of panelists who are going to help navigate this conversation. 60 days ago was our last live event. It's the last time I stepped foot into a hotel ballroom, that I unloaded a truck, I ate inside a restaurant. I can't believe it's been 60 days ago for me today. But our industry, in that meantime, has really come to an extreme halt, a screeching halt overnight, and continues to see the fallout from COVID-19. Yet, we're all still standing. Some a little wobbly from all the drinking. I may be one of them, but nonetheless, we are all still standing. And we're all here. So we're here eager, we're ready to do what we do best, and that's to serve others. And it's our service-minded nature and mentality that makes us strong and ready to persevere through the next steps, which I think may be even more difficult than the past 60 days. Human connection, service, and creating experiences, that is our industry. As we move to adapt and pivot our companies, the need to provide that human connection, service, and experience doesn't change. It's our foundation, and it's the fabric that brings us all together today. So as we begin today, I want to start with a quick poll. So let me go ahead and bring that up. Mike, can you bring the poll up? It looks like you may have been logged in as me there.
No, I can't.
Can you log in back in as me and bring up the poll?
What's that?
Can you log back in as me and bring up the poll?
Yeah, I'll come out and come back.
Okay, thank you. Okay, looks like I may have logged in differently. So he'll bring up that poll here in just a second. So as he's working on that, kind of want to get a baseline for when our next live events are. So some of us have things coming up soon. Some of us may have things coming up later. And some of us may have things coming up never. So when he logs back in, we'll bring up that poll. And we can kind of get a baseline for that. I have a few resources that I'll put in the chat function as well. The U.S. Travel Industry Association has put together a report for health and safety guidelines around the travel industry. This will be helpful as you're not only preparing to travel, but maybe to receive guests at your hotels, your venues, your events. Some of you may have already seen this, but it's just a great resource to share. As we've been working with ADME and some of our DMCs from across the globe, we're finding that our CVBs, our hotels, and people are putting together their own safety guidelines, and I would really encourage our visitor bureaus to be kind of the leader in that effort to bring together those resources. Clients are going to be asking for what's next. How is your city reacting? What's open? What's the timelines for different things? But what are those safety standards and guidelines for each of your hotels, motor coach companies, event companies, rental places? So again, anything that somebody is touching in a way, how are you collecting that information? And maybe being the kind of the hub for that content. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind as well. The Event Industry Council, I'm just going to put this link in the chat function as well. The Events Industry Council is a global effort of a lot of our organizations, SGMP being one of them. With that, you can see that that's a great resource for coronavirus details, who has put together some guidelines for live events as well. So it's a great resource, again, as you're kind of preparing those next steps to bring people together, what that can look like. And then another resource I want to go ahead and plug into the box today is from their OK Commerce Department. Secretary Sean Copeland was on a call last week and did a great job kind of discussing next steps of what it looks like here in Oklahoma in our hours program as we come back together and things start to reopen. This is a great resource again for that localized state plans as well. Each city, as we kind of go through some updates today, may have some different approaches, some different guidelines, so those are things to consider. But the hours program definitely is something from a state perspective that you can go back and refer to as well. So, Mike, are you able to launch the poll?
It is polling currently.
Awesome. So go ahead and fill that out. I want to know when your next live event is. You know, when you're going to put on some clothes and you're going to go out of your house and either attend, manage, put on a live event. What does that look like for you? Is it here in the next few months, this fall, or 2021? So whenever you have those results, Mike, I'd love to see them.
We've got 22 of 30, so we'll give it another few seconds.
This has been a good baseline for us as we've gone through the last 60 days. Some of our industry groups, as we've met globally and here in the US, we've been able to kind of see when live events are expected to come back, even as we continue to see fallout. You know, ASAE announced this week that they're canceling their live event in Vegas. MPI moved their live event to November. So again, even as we continue to see fallout from live events taking place or them being postponed to a later date, this kind of gives us, I feel like sometimes a glimmer of hope of when we can expect to see that next live event. So Mike, whenever you're ready to share those results.
They are viewing now.
Okay.
Looks like 22% in June, 22% in August, 22% in September. Those are the popular ones.
Okay. So we're still seeing some potential for June, July, and August. That's a positive note as we dive into this conversation. And maybe our big positive piece to take away is that there is still some live events that are on the books currently for the summer and for fall. So that is fantastic. So I want to go ahead and jump right in as we begin to reopen here in Oklahoma. What does that mean for our industry and for our companies and our partners that are all on this call today? So let's begin by hearing from the president of the Tulsa Hotel and Lodging Association and the general manager at the Hyatt Regency Tulsa, our friend James Cunningham.
Great, I had to unmute myself there. So again, thank you for having me, Brian. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I am also the president of the Oklahoma Lodging Association, and as well as the GM of the Hyatt here in Tulsa. As we talked about earlier, and certainly as most of you know, our industry has been very hard hit. Looking back across the American Hotel Lodging Association statistics, since the advent of the COVID virus around March the 15th, where it really started taking a hold on the industry has lost over $23 billion in revenue. Currently, we're on pace to lose $2.8 billion per week. And CBRE predicts our second quarter to be down over 80%. And as we talked about earlier, you know, it certainly has an impact on our associates and our employees, of which over 70% of all hotel employees and associates in the United States have been laid off or furloughed currently. The U.S. occupancies are averaging this week around 20%, which, believe it or not, is actually a small uptick. The state of Oklahoma is just below 15%. And as Sherry mentioned earlier, you know, with a lot of hotels running below 35% occupancy, hotels are looking at potentially closing their doors either temporarily or permanently based on each one of their individual needs and debt requirements. However, you know, on a more positive note, I think that we're starting to see some signs of life here in Oklahoma. We're starting to see our paces change just in the last 4 to 5 days. We're starting to see where the overall booking patterns have gone from a 48-hour window up to a 72-hour window. and starting to see a significant uptick in bookings overall. So we're hoping to see that continue as the pace increases. And I think it's just important for me to communicate, you know, to all of our folks out there that are looking at hosting meetings or looking at staying in the hotels in the future, that, you know, the hotels in Oklahoma are open for business. All of our hotels in the state of Oklahoma have adopted the Stay Safe Standards program, which includes enhanced cleaning, enhanced training of our associates, the use of personal protection equipment for our associates, safe distancing between our associates and our guests, and the enhanced food and beverage requirements and enhanced meeting requirements as we move forward. Overall, you know, as we proceed forward, we fully believe our industry is prepared to welcome our guests back. And, you know, I just want to communicate that we're safe, we are clean, we're open for business, and, you know, we're here to welcome all the events that come into the area and to hotels. And I think going forward that, you know, we're just prepared to handle, you know, the business as it comes back and we reopen the economy. With that, Brian, I don't have a lot more to report. I know you asked me to keep it short, so I'll remain available for questions whenever you feel that's appropriate, but that's my my report thus far.
Awesome. So what challenges are you anticipating over the next, let's say the next 60 days, you know, 120 days and through the rest of the year? What challenges do you feel like our hotels are going to be faced with?
So literally with the as my role in the Oklahoma Lodging Association, I spent about 2 hours a week on the phone with the governor, working on roles. It was a lot easier for us to come up with some specific guidelines as we were open restaurants, you know, and this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do. But since so many hotels actually did not close, you know, it's kind of harder to come out and go, okay, what have we been doing? What do we need to do? I think right now, you know, our biggest challenge, it revolves around meetings, and we're working on those guidelines as we speak. You know, do we allow 6 people at a 60-inch round, 10 people at a 72-inch round? Does each table have to be 6 feet apart? You know, are buffets good, not good? You know, do we have to man buffets, or each individual meal has to be served separately? So, you know, the challenges are just working through those dynamics coming up to what will make our guests feel safe to have a meeting in our hotel, and what we can do to keep everybody safe and secure.
So as you're working with, this may be a particular question for you as the general manager of the Hyatt versus maybe representing the association. So what are you doing with events that, again, may see lower attendance, with you know, knowing that some may have a hybrid approach to a conference as things do come back, but don't want to necessarily cancel an event or a meeting. They still want to do something, but know they may have lower attendance. What are you doing?
Well, I think, Brian, that certainly that plays to our favor, both to the client and to the hotel, because if we have a greater space restriction, so let's say, again, we have to limit our size of our event, where we could have put 600 people in the meeting room, now we can only put 400. Obviously that, you know, will also complement your association coming in and having a meeting where you would have had 600 attendees and now you only have 400. So I think it's a real win-win for us as we work together, and you know, flexibility is going to be the key moving forward as we continue to learn and establish what the new norm is.
Perfect. We'll come back with some more questions here in just a little bit, James, but that was a wonderful update from the Oklahoma Hotel and Lodging Association. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Kind of sticking with that same concept, I'm going to move over to the Oklahoma Restaurant Association and our friends at Aunt Pittypat's Catering. And Maggie Howell is an OKC native who's worked as a restaurant general manager for 8 years in Chicago and New York City before returning home back here in Oklahoma to buy Aunt Pittypat's from her father in 2004. She served as the vice chair, treasurer, and then chairman of the board of the Oklahoma Restaurant Association in 2017. So representing, I feel like, not only the Restaurant Association and what a restaurant's dealing with, but I think our friends of a catering industry and the impact that that has on our live events as well. So Maggie, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Yes, thanks. So we, like everybody else, in March, basically the weekend of the 15th, everything canceled for April. April and October are our 2 biggest months of the year. So we lost about $350,000 worth of business just in April. And we do about 1.5 million a year. So it's a large chunk for us. Between April and May, it's going to be closer to 500,000. A lot of it has moved to the fall, so there's some optimism there. I'm not sure, just like the rest of you, what that looks like. One of the events that we do, and we work very closely with Brian's group, is Women for OSU in Stillwater, which is usually 500 to 600 ladies gathering for a very tight event in Stillwater. And it's currently still on. Tickets are being sold. It's been moved to September 2nd. Which is going to be early for the end of summer. So we will see how that works out. We're looking at all kinds of things. Currently, we have changed for the few events we have. I'm one of the people who have events in June, and we literally have 2. So one is a wedding and another is a small meeting. And those have changed a lot. We are looking at disposable vehicles as opposed to dealing with China, so that there's less touch between the guests and the employees. Of course, I'm having masks custom made, ideally logoed. We're trying to just incorporate it into our uniform and make it part of what we do. So those are things that will just be part of our uniform until further notice. Gloves, of course. And then, you're looking at lots of use of disposable, which isn't where the direction we normally like to go from a sustainable standpoint and just for upscale events, but it's really going to be the safest way to go for quite a while, we think. So I have a very upscale wedding that actually moved from March to the end of June. And they were originally going to do just family, like 16 people, which I was really comfortable with, but they've gotten very confident. And now they have 120. And I have to say, it's worrisome for me and my staff and my managers and the guests. It's something that we are taking very seriously on how we handle it and working closely with the event planner. And we are going to all disposable items, but because it's very upscale, we're getting a lot of things logoed for them and using some really interesting, fun things. So the creativity is great. We're happy to do it, but it certainly is a different feel. And literally, we have 2 events in June and currently 2 events in July. We are booked more heavily about mid-August, which is normal for summer. For us to pick up. Of course, it's not normal to only have 2 events these other months. As a caterer, we switched over really quickly to a individual meal pickup and delivery, which we call Eat Naked, and we have been promoting, and it's been really fun. But it's not enough to sustain us and to stay open. It was really to get us through the PPP time that we had the 8 weeks with our staff that we were able to keep on with that PPP payment, but that ends at the beginning of June. So we are probably laying off our entire staff through the summer, furloughed. We've done some concessions where we're going to pay insurance for some people, the people that are on insurance that normally pay half. We're going to cover that for the summer in hopes that we can bring them all back. And then when we do have events, we'll work it on a contract labor situation. Because there's just no way to keep people employed. So Eat Naked will end at the end of May as well, just because at this point it's not enough to bring in enough revenue to keep us up and going. So it's a very hard emotional time. We, like you, are feeling very uncertain about what the fall looks like, and I'm mostly, I think, very concerned about the safety and comfortability of my staff, and putting them in a situation where they can feel confident about what we're doing, and that they are safe, as well as keeping our guests safe. So like you, it is a troublesome time, and we are looking at all types of ways to make sure that we can have that confidence.
Definitely. And Maggie, when we started with COVID-19, we had this set of fear that we were working with, and then we kind of went into quarantine for a little bit, and now we're coming back out with a new set of fear. That's right. that we're all having to deal with as well. And when we can see consumer confidence, and whether that's in travel, hosting live events, or et cetera, whenever that confidence comes back up and the fear kind of starts to go away a little bit, is probably when we'll start to see things change a little bit. but all this is so new. So again, we're all surrounded by a lot of fear that we're navigating right now, which is hard. I mean, that just makes it very much more difficult. I think I'm with you on, you know, what the summer looks like now is pretty bleak. But, you know, fall, everything that postponed from March, April, and May moved to September and October.
Yes.
So if it all sticks, I don't know how any of us are going to do it, but we'll all find a way to make it happen.
Exactly.
You know,
we'll take anything we can get and go crazy with it.
Yeah.
But it will depend on the confidence level, and if there's a spike, and if there is, when that happens. I mean, I've been telling my staff and even clients that we just simply probably won't know anything about the fall until end of July, so we can really see what happens. So we like are being flexible with our clients, of course, with cancellations and certainly not holding them to amounts of guest attendance as early as we normally would. We are going to probably have a lot of clients that we don't normally ask for deposits, but going into the fall, we're probably going to have to, just so we can buy food, things like that. So there will be adjustments on how we can make these things happen. But yeah, like you said, October is just as busy as April, and we're already had so many people move that there will be events that we may not even be able to take if everything goes well. And that will be a fantastic problem to have. I'm certainly not complaining. But I feel very confident in the fact that I have nothing to be confident about until July, until we can really see what's going to happen for fall. And we're doing everything we can to set ourselves up for that and to move in the direction we need to.
Definitely. I think we're starting to see, and hopefully wait a few more weeks, but starting to see fallout from fall already.
Yeah.
Just this week alone, just some canceled events and things like that, I feel like are maybe making that decision a little too early. But again, each person needs to navigate the situation how they need to navigate it. So I'm not judging on that part, but
Sure.
seeing that. The Oklahoma Restaurant Association has done a fabulous job of putting out daily information to their members. So if you are a member, you're probably receiving that content. But if you're not, they have been working very hard with their members and really leading this effort.
Yeah. And the National Restaurant Association, they've been completely tied into them. So if you are members of both, which I am, you will get almost identical email. They've been just really on top of it. I've been incredibly impressed, as I always am. The administration at the ORA is just really fantastic, and people who have been there 25, 30 years. So they have absolutely done an incredible job keeping us up to date and keeping people, you know, with lots of support, both financially and just from a law standpoint and health standpoint, and the Serve Safe, that they now have a free COVID-19 Serve Safe, which is fantastic for your employees. We're putting our employees through it so we can say that to our clients and say we are prepared, we know what to do. So yeah, the ORA, if you haven't, it's a phenomenal time to be a member, and because they will and have kept everybody really in line on what's going on. So bravo to them.
Do you see, again, kind of as we were talking with James, like some businesses that are permanently closed from either the catering side and or restaurant, but I know we still have some people that are delayed in opening or remain closed, maybe didn't even do curbside during the time because they saw it really wasn't, again, like what you kind of had said, it just kind of put a little Band-Aid on the situation, but did not really help, you know, financially.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. And I think over the summer, we're going to see a bigger fallout in restaurants and catering. Those who maybe made it through because of PPP and because of loans, but couldn't take on enough, because the world may reopen, but that doesn't mean people are going out. That doesn't mean there's enough volume. There are the restaurant and catering world, it is very slim margins. And so when you go from being able to pack your maybe only 60-seat restaurant and getting by and making that work, to only being able to seat 20 to 30 people, assuming 20 to 30 people even show up over the summer, you can't make any money and you can't pay your bills and your rent. So those restaurants aren't going to make it. And caterers are the same. Now, again, we are going into a normally somewhat slower time, but coming off the part of the year you were supposed to prepare yourself for that slow time and have nothing, there are just a lot of people who won't be able to survive that. And you have to make a decision as a business owner on whether you take on more debt in order to keep going in hopes that it comes back in the fall, or do you shut down and, you know, take out personal money to just keep the lights on so that you can come back, or do you decide that it's time to shut it down completely? Those conversations are happening everywhere, and the hospitality industry is nowhere near out of the woods with this situation because of the margins that we exist on. And there are just so many businesses that there's just no way they will make it through an entire summer, even assuming fall is fabulous and we're busy and full again and there's nothing to worry about, which is very unlikely. That there's so many businesses that you can't make it another month without taking on more debt. And it's going to be a really sad summer for the hospitality industry and a lot of our friends.
Definitely. Awesome. I'm sure we'll have a few more questions here towards the end, but thank you for that update from
Sure.
the Oklahoma Restaurant Association. I appreciate that. Let's go over to Oklahoma City, to Katie Smith with Oklahoma City Convention and Visitors Bureau. Katie is one of our newer SGMP members, so this may be her first meeting, so we're excited to have her here, but she's a return Oklahoma City native. She spent much of her 20-year career working for a large tour and travel operator company in several tier 1 cities throughout the world. She later stumbled into a career with a large third-party planner in Chicago, where she developed a love for the MICE industry. In June, she'll be celebrating her 1-year anniversary with Visit OKC, where she services the surf market. So Katie, welcome to SGMP, and kind of share with what's going on here in Oklahoma City.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everyone. I know I only got to meet most of you just that briefly at our February meeting, so I'm happy to be here. Mike Carrier, our president, really wanted to be a part of this and to give this update, but he was fully booked today. So I apologize you get me today. So I might be a little scripted, so just to warn you in advance. I also have a 3-year-old running around somewhere. So just like everyone's talking about, we are just as devastated as anyone else is, our community. Currently, about 70% of our hotels are open. That does mean about 30% of our properties are closed. Most of these are temporary closures. I think that's the good news. Very few are definite closures. And the ones that are closed are part of larger portfolios. So owners have been strategic with the hotels that they were closing to funnel more business into specific parts of their portfolio. So we are starting to see some of them reopen. We just did a kind of a boots on the ground poll about 2 weeks ago, where we reached out to every single one of our properties to kind of gauge when they would be reopening. And most of them we've heard in the mid-June kind of time frame, but and then some we couldn't even make contact with. So as for loss of current and future business, just like everyone else, everything stopped mid-March and has canceled through May. We do have quite a few of our annuals still on the books for June and July. One would be like the Dead Film Festival, which is still on the books, but with alterations to how the program's going to operate. Most of it will be virtual, and still trying to decide how we might get some of those events where bringing people together and what that would look like. So we do have them on the books. We do expect some of these to still cancel though, or postpone to the fall. We're still receiving leads and RFPs, though our overall volume is down about 70% on lead volume. I will say though, the leads that we are getting are serious leads now. Everything that's coming in are usually from a local estate planner or someone in the regional area. So we are getting contracts signed during this time. As for if suppliers are changing the way that they operate, of course, we are working with our hotel community to see what that looks like. And many of them are following brand standards. Some of our independent hotels are waiting to see what a client dictates. I think at the end of the day, that's something that we're looking for, is what would make our clients feel comfortable in coming back. So a lot of hotels are taking that approach as well. A glimmer of hope, we are seeing a major uptick on our Visit OKC website. Just this last week, clicks have gone up about 40% in the areas of attractions and things to do, as well as our restaurants page, showing which restaurants are opening, which have limited service, and which ones are expected to open soon. So we do have a little hope in that. We are predicting the first thing that's going to bounce back is going to be leisure travel. And then after that, hopefully in the fall, start to see some of our state associations and local and regional meetings come back. And then obviously maybe the first of Q1 or Q2 of next year, looking at bringing more of the national meetings back. From our leads that we're seeing, that's what we're getting sourced, is that early 2021 from anything national. I guess that's the main part of my update. I think the biggest thing, I don't know if most of you probably saw the press release that came out this week. The CVB itself has also been significantly affected by all of this, all of the pandemic. So we had to lay off about 30% of our staff this week, which has been very difficult. So we are severely impacted, and we're trying to figure out what our new norm is going to look like. So I might not be able to answer a lot of questions on that. Thank you.
Awesome. So Katie, with that too, so you mentioned leisure travel coming back, and obviously people are looking at the website for things to do, places to stay. Are you tracking what that looks like probably for Memorial Day weekend, knowing that that typically is a busy, traveling time for people, especially in our area where we like to drive places versus necessarily fly in the Midwest. So is that something that you guys are tracking yet to see if hotel occupancy or attractions are starting to get questions or experience maybe their first busy weekend since COVID?
Yes, absolutely. One of the best examples I like to give is one that we just recently had this week with our with the Hilton Garden Inn in downtown Bricktown. One of the biggest questions they were getting is, when is your pool going to open? When is your pool going to open? Because a lot of that leisure travel is wanting to come into the area. So they are planning to open their pool this week. So just little things like that are coming up. Lindsay Vidring in marketing is tracking all that and can provide some of the data if you do need it.
Cool. I think it would be good to even have that data from our CVBs, but also from James and the Hotel Lodging Association following Memorial Day weekend. What did we see and experience? Could be a good just trend tracker for us to see what that looks like. And again, some of that travel could boost some consumer confidence for what the summer could look like as well. So that would be just interesting to watch kind of over the next few weeks. So awesome. Thank you, Katie. Next, let's go over to Tulsa. We're going to meet with Marlene Livaday, who has joined the Tulsa Convention Visitors Bureau 4 years ago as a national sales manager, handling the corporate, multicultural, and government markets. Prior to the Tulsa CVB, Marlene spent 5 years as the director of sponsorships for the WNBA Tulsa Shock, and 20+ years in professional golf industry as a tournament director for the Tour Championship, PGA Championship, and US Women's Open. So Marlene, you're no stranger to SGMP, so welcome, and I'm excited for you to share with us what's going on in Tulsa.
Thank you, Brian, James, Maggie, Katie, and Taylor for being part of the panel, and I'm very excited about finally getting to see everyone after a couple of months. It's been a long time. And so it is a difficult time and an interesting time. So some of the questions that you posted, temporary hotel closure, I know James went through a few of that, a little bit of that, and our casino properties are closed. There are several full service hotels that are still closed and will remain closed until June. And but most of them are opening, and I think there's one more that mid-May they will be opening, but we're glad to see everybody coming back. And as James mentioned earlier, we were interested in the amount of leisure travel that has been coming through Tulsa. I think Ray Hoyt, our president, was very surprised about, we were expecting a certain level of hotel tax, and really it was about 24% higher than what he anticipated. Or about 20% higher than what he anticipated. So we were very excited about seeing that travel coming in. Talking about current and future business, approximately from our records, about 60 meetings or conventions have canceled or postponed. And that is of last week. And it's an estimated direct loss of about $60 million, or a total economic impact loss of about $110 million. And it's probably much more because we don't have every meeting tracked, but it is a huge hit for our city. Some of the things that I think are really great that are happening is that Tulsa Regional Tourism, Ray Hoyt and Matt Stockman, have put together a regional tourism recovery task force. And this is exciting in that the task force will bring together tourism partners from the Tulsa area, including hoteliers, tourism stakeholders, attraction and facility leaders, and elected officials. And the group convenes to identify best practices for reopening Tulsa. And I think it's going to be a really exciting program, and James Cunningham is a big part of that. And he brings a wealth of knowledge to this. The committees that are on the task force are marketing and communications, which will drive social media and give added value to our partners and our incoming conventions and clients. Another group is experiences and services, which will be going the extra mile to give a more personal touch during these budget conscious times. I know it's going to be very personal service driven. And so we're going to work closely with our partners to bring added value. Another area is sales and trying to create new ways to sell Tulsa, build strategies for developing new business and opportunities, searching for new conventions to bring to Tulsa. And then business administration, which is more the financial function, or bringing stats and good reporting so that everybody has the most current information. So we're very excited about that. Some of the things that we've been working on, we recently sent out a 5-question survey to planners, and we hope to better understand their expectations moving forward and how they want to host their events coming back to Tulsa. We will share the results with our facilities, hotels, and stakeholders. And if anyone's interested, we can also probably share that with you once the survey results are compiled. And things that we found, some of the planners, looking at some of the results so far, the planners are looking for flexible contracts, cleaning and disinfecting processes from the facilities and hotels. And I think the hotel did a really good job of laying out their programs. I think they're waiting to hear from a few of the facilities. So this will all come with the task force. Social distancing procedures, meals are a high concern, boxed meals, individual sealed meals, things like that, PPE. Are very important. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now. I know it's a time for the Convention and Visitors Bureau to reset and bring together new plans, new strategic planning, be it short-term, long-term, of how we're dealing with incoming meetings and planning and selling. So those are some of the things that we're doing and excited about. I know that some of the new things that are happening in Tulsa is we're having Major League Fishing coming back or coming to Tulsa for 2021. We were recently awarded the 2030 PGA Championship, which is great news for Tulsa. It's one of the major 4 championships in the country. And we've been able to secure a couple of multi-year large contracts for 2022 and 23, thanks to Kristen and a couple of others. Good job there. And then you were asking about, I guess, our next live event. I know still on the books in June is the Mid-America Shelby Ford meet, and that's going to be interesting. So it'll be a good time for Tulsa.
Oh, that's perfect. With that too, you had mentioned, this is a time, and I think not only for the CVBs, but a lot of other businesses like Maggie or ourselves that are kind of in that small business realm too, it is an opportunity to step back a little bit and to reinvent yourselves and to think, what did I learn over the past X number of years? And if I could do it again, kind of that fresh start a little bit as we start to reopen. Or again, same thing with our hotels or our other partners. If we go to do a live event again, it doesn't have to be the same thing it has always been. It's a chance to really reinvent ourselves, not only for the short term, like you mentioned, but the long term as well. Are there projects that you guys have going on in Tulsa? I'm thinking back to like renovations of the convention center, things like that. Are those still done, in the works? Any programs on hold? Gathering Place is obviously open and a huge, not just state attraction, but has gained global recognition. Now that is reopening, what does that look like when parks and places like that have been closed for some time, especially around playground equipment?
Well, good questions. I know the Cox Business Convention Center is still moving forward with the renovation, and things are on time, and they're excited about opening. I know it's a difficult time, but when everything does come back, they'll be ready, and they're excited. The Gathering Place has closed, and they will slowly start to reopen starting phase 2. They'll just open with a few trails and things like that, but they don't plan to probably fully reopen until phase 3 or next month sometime. So they're being very cautious, and we're excited about having them open, at least going through the trail, because people really miss it. I noticed at one of the reports that Brian Williams, our VP of Business Administration, sent out. He showed how the vehicle traffic was trending through Oklahoma. And while we had stayed even with the state, Osage County had really done an uptick in their travel. So people are really, the leisure tourism is coming back.
No, that's fantastic. And I go back and celebrate your win for the 2030 PGA Tour. I think any win that a hotel has for a meeting, any win that one of our cities has is a win for our industry. And I think we all need to keep celebrating those. And we're going to find that, again, we're going to look different on the other side. I think our community will grow, our industry will grow stronger because of this. So let's continue to celebrate those wins, no matter where they're at in Oklahoma, because it's a win for our industry there.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you, Marlene. Let's head to Norman. Dan Shim is joining us. He's the Executive Director of Visit Norman. He's also joined by our SGMP board member, Taylor Wagner from Visit Norman as well. And I have a slide that I'll put up, Dan, for you as well. So you go take it away, Dan.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. Taylor asked me to jump on. She would have done a great job and can fill in on anything that I miss here. But, it's such a surreal time right now. In early March, our mayor did do a monthly podcast, and she asked me to come on there and talk about all of the events and festivals and things coming up in Norman. About a week after that, it was an obsolete, irrelevant podcast because all of those events had been canceled or moved. Just crazy how quickly that happened as we, after the podcast, we're talking about COVID and my thoughts on how it would impact us. And maybe I was naive, I don't know, but I did not think that it would hit us like this. And as all of my colleagues here have mentioned, travel and tourism has just been decimated by this. Hit the hardest, and I think it may take us a bit to recover. So you see our slide that's up there, Taylor, supporting our Mask Up in May campaign. We are encouraging all of our citizens, if you go out, to mask up, protects everyone around you. And so we have initiated a Healthier at Home campaign, and that started as of May 1st. Each of these phases is a 14-day phase that we will move through. You can kind of see right now, tomorrow starts our phase 1B. So right now we're meeting in groups of 10 or less, but gyms are open, non-essential retail is open, restaurants are open, pet grooming, golf courses, other things, tattoo parlors. But all of this is with masks for staff and employees and social distancing requirements in place Friday or tomorrow. And I've seen the numbers, they look good. So we are going to move into phase 1B, groups of 10 or less still, but places of worship can open. What we're excited about, youth sports can begin practicing. Playgrounds and basketball courts will open as well. Then, assuming the numbers look good again, we'll move into phase 2 and then phase 3, which is eventually groups of 50 or less, which then moving into the fall, hopefully we will open up to those restrictions with social distancing, but much larger groups for sure. Summer is always a slow time for Norman, but we use the spring with all of the festivals to kind of build up the revenue for our restaurants and businesses. So it's going to be a lean time for all of our Norman businesses with the students gone, with the university shut down through the summer. It's a tough time right now. And I saw Alice talking a bit about OU opening back up. They have announced that students will be here in the fall. Now, what that looks like, we're still not sure of. But we're kind of waiting with bated breath as well on what football does. I think that there is going to be a football season, but what that looks like is still unknown. Are there going to be games played with no fans in the stands? I watched last night, there was a UFC event that was being held in an empty arena. Just kind of really strange and odd. And I can't imagine college football having no fans there, but that's an option. Something else they're looking at is just a normal season and then everything in between. So a shortened season, a later season. So we're waiting there. Norman is so dependent upon the university and football as well. So we're kind of waiting to see what happens there. Throughout this process, we've had about 5 to 7 properties that have temporarily closed. They all plan on reopening, but we'll see. I think some have started to reopen. Some, they're still NCD. They're still waiting to hear when they will open back up again. That's our big USPS Postal Training Center, a 940-room property with about 60,000 square feet of meeting space. So that makes up about 30% of our inventory. So with them closed, there's a big hit on guest tax revenue, which is how we're funded. Something else that my DMO colleagues are dealing with, most of us are organized as 501c6 organizations. So with no visitors coming and staying in the hotels, or, I heard James talking, they have some base business from airlines and other things. Our base business in Norman is the university. And with that shut down through July, we're seeing very low occupancy, single digits through April. That's ticked back up as things begin to open back up. And we hope to see, up to 20, 22, 25% occupancy in June. But it's been a lean couple months for us. And we're not eligible as a 501c6 entity for that payroll protection program. So our DMOs across the country are looking at furloughs of people. We're down 1 person, so that's about 20% of our staff. We're down with just no plans to rehire in the immediate future. We're relying on EIDL, Economic Impact Disaster Loans, through the SBA, but because they're not staffed to handle all of the requests that have come in, that's a slow process as well. So just like all of you, we're finding creative ways to keep our staff and as staffed up as we can and be here to help all of you. I would say that for those of you looking at trying to work with hotels that may be closed or are lean and mean right now and don't have the same number of people or your contacts gone, you reach out to your DMO, use us because we still have contacts through those hotels and we're maintaining communication with those hotels. So we know who to contact. We're able to get answers for you that maybe you're having problems emailing your usual point of contact there. So, but you know, we are optimistic that things are going to come back. Travel will return. Brian, you asked who's taking vacation still. Our family is planning on still going out to Angel Fire, New Mexico in late June, early July. It's a drive trip for us, and I think that we're positioned in this state well. People will maybe be canceling bigger trips where they're flying somewhere internationally or to a larger city, and they're gonna want to go somewhere. There's pent up demand. Catherine mentioned she's at home with a 3-year-old. I've got a 6 and 4-year-old at home. We are so ready to travel. We're going to go somewhere, and maybe multiple places. You know, take those big trips and turn it into multiple driving long weekends. So I think as a state, because we have such a great interstate system and so many great attractions throughout the state, we are hopefully poised to bounce back sooner rather than later as some of those bigger cities that are experiencing hotspots and other things. I will say some numbers. You all have touched on the numbers for loss of revenue and all of that. So I won't go there and reiterate that. But throughout this process, when it kind of hit in mid-March, our hospital system, we went on lockdown or stay in place a little earlier than probably everybody else. Norman's been pretty aggressive with that, but I think the goal of that is to ensure that the hospital has capacity to treat whoever it needs and has all of the rooms and beds and ventilators and everything. So our hospital has had, over the whole course of this time from mid-March to now, a total of 61 COVID patients that have been in. So the maximum number they had in their 2 more Norman locations on one day was 15. And for the most part, we've been in the single digits there, and we're down to 1 or 2 right now. So it seems like this is rampant, but we've done a good job as a state, I think, of sheltering in place and flattening the curve. And so at least in Norman and more, it's working. The hospital capacity is there. Our executive director on a call this morning of the hospital, or president CEO, just said that they tested for antibodies, all 1,100 of their healers, and less than 2% had antibodies. That means less than 2% had been have or had COVID. As a percentage of our community in Norman, when you take out, there were 2 nursing homes where it really ran through and altered the numbers or skewed the numbers. So if you take those out, you know, you can control nursing homes and who goes in or out, but when they're there, they're not leaving. It's hard for them to kind of self-quarantine. If you take the nursing home numbers out, about 1.7% of the population of Norman, when you correlate that out through all of the tests that have been done, have tested positive. So 1.7% of the 120,000 people in Norman have tested positive or would test positive for COVID. So those are very low numbers. Everything is trending in the right direction to pick back up in fall. None of us know, of course, what's going to happen and will there be a flare-up as we open back up, but I know our hospitals are standing ready and have plenty of capacity. So I hope that it was good to hear that the group, although it's a little scary that the wedding party had 120 people now come up, that I think the fear is starting to subside a little bit. And I think our hotels, our restaurants, our others are doing a great job of preparing to open back up and to have meetings and events and groups that they provide a safe environment and have everything sterile and clean and have met all of the needs of your groups. So I guess that's all I have. Taylor, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you did a fantastic job. I just wanted to make sure you guys are hearing from the expert himself and I didn't lead you astray. But please know that we are here for you, and if we don't have the answers, we'll certainly find them out for you. So hope to see you all very soon down in Norman. But thanks so much, and thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I would like to reiterate too that, and you all know this, but it's extremely important to get out and support our local retail and restaurants and other things. Because as your groups are choosing where to go, as they're coming to Norman, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, other places, these locally owned restaurants, these entertainment districts and others are what your attendees want to go see. And so it's important that we as community members support them during this time so that they're there when things get back to normal. They are going to get back to normal, but we need these unique local places to survive and be here, and we need to support it as much as possible. We've kind of shifted our marketing efforts from outside to get visitors to come right now, and we're shifting out of that, but to an internal, get our community out supporting all of our groups, and I hope you're all doing the same. And then look to some of your properties and hotels. James, I don't know if you're doing this, but some of our properties have started staycation campaigns with the pools opening back up. You may not want to go to Whitewater or some other big, really crowded water park, but you can go to a hotel, take a long weekend, maybe leave the kids with grandma and grandpa and relax there. So hopefully you guys will consider doing that as well. So thank you for having me.
Excellent, Dan, and I think that's a good point. That's where we can continue to push local and our local partners and hotels and supporting them too is from that staycation standpoint or small groups and things like that, and celebrate all the wonderful businesses and partners we have here in the state. One question I have for you, I feel like Norman has been kind of a leader in taking a conservative approach to the reopening process. So knowing that phase 3 for you of the goal of June 12th looks like groups of 50 or less, I believe the state is, as of June 1, restrictions are lifted and some of those things. So we'd still be seeing more restrictions in Norman. When do you feel, or do you have a pulse yet of when that restriction would be lifted as to all groups of all sizes are able to meet?
Yeah, good question. I know our mayor has been very cautious throughout this process, and I don't envy her. It's a tough position that she gets about, I think, $80 a month for. So these really hard decisions, and she's done a good job with it. Some of the stricter requirements that have been put in place in Norman versus other communities have been lifted because of letters from attorney generals regarding worship, religious places. The salon owners kind of got together and got an injunction from a judge saying if gyms and other places can be open, then we should be able to open too. And the judge had an injunction there agreeing. So that's healthier at home dates. That's what she's planning on right now. But I would imagine if every other place is opening back up and becoming a little looser in their requirements, and we don't have huge flare-ups, we expect there to be, as things open back up, an increase in numbers somewhat, but we just don't want there to be such a flare-up that our hospitals are getting overrun. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm saying prayers every day that doesn't happen. But as long as it doesn't, I would anticipate that June 12th, that kind of a week or two after that, we start to open up more. And potentially if our surrounding communities are doing that, then I could see some pressure on her that we even do that faster. So no later than July, though, is kind of what I've talked to her about as a worst case scenario as far as opening everybody back up.
Perfect. We have time for a few questions. Feel free if you would like to unmute yourself and ask a question, or if any of our panelists have any additional comments. Fantastic information shared today. So again, if anybody has a question they'd like to ask, feel free to unmute yourself.
I have a question. I noticed Matt and Carrie were on this call. Could we get an update on the Omni?
Yeah, happy to give you an update. I mean, right now, we are still on track. As you can see behind me, that's a pretty recent photo. I think it was from April 30th. Our last crane just came down about a week And we're still on track. The building looks really good on the inside. I've seen some really nice construction photos. I haven't been personally back in the building probably for about 2.5 months since we've gone through this whole shelter in place kind of deal. And sorry if it gets loud. I've got 2 kids here. But they seem to be on track. They're punching rooms right now. So we're looking really in terms of being able to be open in Q1 of 2021.
Fantastic. Tasha, do you have anything you'd like to add from a MPI standpoint? And just trying to think again, when we're able to bring our organizations together in a different way, it's powerful for our industry. That maybe there is something you're seeing from the meeting planning side as well.
I think just to echo what everyone else has said, what I'm hearing in MPI is that they are cautiously approaching future events. I know there's been some cancellations. They canceled their May event, and then they are kind of just taking it a step-by-step wait and see approach. So it's interesting because I think just like everybody has said that on the event planning side, the meeting planners, they're seeing just as much impact as the hotels. From the 2 or 3 conversations that I have had, even some of the universities are still having their meeting planners shelter in place. So that impacts if they can travel. So some groups that may want to travel or may be interested in traveling, if your event planner is based out of a university and they're not able to do that, it's just interesting because I think the fact that there isn't one solid approach is kind of adding to the chaos as far as not one set of rules coming down from a national level. I think it's kind of sporadic. I see a lot of people moving to digital and virtual. We have a gala coming up that is going to do, they're going to hit their food and beverage minimum by us packaging cookies for them that they're going to deliver 2 days in advance. And they're going to put a link on the top of the package to their live feed that they're going to shoot from our ballroom. And they're going to have 5 people come in full gala outfits and, and do a event as if there were people in the room. So they still have the feeling of a gala. So it's really interesting because people are getting really creative and finding ways to, work through it.
Cool. Well, that's a wonderful update as well. And knowing that MPI in November is in Grapevine, that's a quick drive, for us to support face-to-face meetings as well. Emily, you're in Edmond. Is there anything different there than what we've heard from Norman, Oklahoma City, or Tulsa?
Not really. We're kind of working on our game plan as far as, getting back into the office and what that's going to look like moving forward. We're an office of 4. And so, some of us, I think, are a little bit more nervous than others. And we're officed out of the Edmond Conference Center. I know that they're slowly getting some business back, not anything spectacular, but there's going to be some meetings. So we're kind of taking it one day at a time. We're spending this time, getting some strategic plans in order, working on some different projects that we, didn't really have a lot of time to work on before. So we're kind of putting together like sponsorship ideas and things that we can get back to normal with, once things kind of settle down a little bit. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty much kind of like, Norman and Oklahoma City and Tulsa and all that. And we're waiting for the hotels to start getting some business again.
Definitely. And I think that was you mentioned employee fear, and that's one of the biggest pieces that employers are combating right now too. Is it's not even the PPE or some of the other pieces, it's the fear of returning to work that is on top of everything else that we have to manage as well. So again, we go back to that 4-letter F word of fear. Just something we're going to have to deal with and continue to deal with as we go through the different phases as we start to reopen. Well, with that, is there any other comments or anybody else want to ask anything? I'm going to go ahead and stop the record.
I have a comment, Brian.
I do as well.
Okay. Go for it, Sherry.
Hey, thank you. So as your chapter president of SGMP, I wanted to thank all of Brian, you for moderating this session today, and all of our esteemed panelists and all of the industry coming together and giving an update of where we are, how we've been impacted, what we see our plans for the future. It's very helpful to have this dialogue, and I think it's well overdue. So I thank y'all so much for doing that. And we've had a great participation as far as from our members. You know, last month we weren't able to meet face to face, obviously. So we planned this virtual event, and I think this was the perfect topic, and to bring in some outside folks outside of SGMP, but obviously our colleagues from the events, meetings, hospitality, travel, tourism industry, which I feel like we're all one big family, and obviously really local here statewide. And I just appreciate it, and I hope that we can continue this conversation. I'd love to have feedback from our membership to see what we want to do for June. I don't know. I know our board has to discuss what we want to do, if we're going to bring a face-to-face, if we're going to venture out there, or are we going to have another virtual. And we typically recognize all of our suppliers and do a supplier appreciation, because you all are always so much an important part of the membership and the partnership that exists in our industry. So just wanted to give you those closing comments. And one other thought that I had going along with this, that I feel like this is a positive note for Oklahoma. If we were early on in the conversation today, I don't know if it was before the official program started, but I mentioned that I'm actually trying to source a hotel for a conference of 700 in Dallas. But our client is the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So it's a federal contract with us, you know, so my role is to find a hotel and do all the logistics for it. Well, that conference was originally slated for up in the Rust Belt, kind of Detroit, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, or anyway, up in the Rust Belt, what I consider Rust Belt portion of the U.S. And so I'd already done a lot of the research looking for properties. Well, just as recently as couple of months or a couple of weeks, no, within this past week, their director at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, what you think that they have a gauge, but it also is just a sign from the federal. They said, no, let's look in central U.S. Let's look for, because we think that will be the least impacted by COVID. So their perception anyway is that they wanted to come into like a Dallas, perhaps Denver. I said, well, how about Oklahoma City? You know, of course, or Tulsa, but we need 600 hotel rooms in our peak night, and all of the meeting space in one, and they don't want to use a convention center. So of course I always am an ambassador for Oklahoma whenever we're able to bring groups here. But I thought that was good news, that we could take a little bit of hope from that perhaps that thinking that is representative of thinking for national groups or regional to thinking, the perception being that Oklahoma may be a safer choice, a better choice in the fall. Anyway, thanks, y'all.
Yeah, that's great insight. Wonderful with that. Maggie?
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to say, I was just thinking after listening to everybody, and this has been really helpful and fascinating, that, you know, if there are hotels or event spaces that may normally do their own food service, but they're not quite ready to equip themselves in ways that people are looking for, like the individual meals, you know, a lot of event spaces or hotels don't deal with a lot of carry out and to go. They do China and it's more upscale. But if you have places that are needing or wanting smaller groups to start and you're not quite ready from a food service standpoint, think about off-premise caterers in your town. You know, people like us, this is what we do. Everything we do is off-premise. So we know how to travel. We know how to do it safely. And we're coming up with lots of really cool creative packaging and things like that. So just a thought on, as I was listening to everybody, that, you know, you may have small groups wanting to get together as they can. And if you're not quite ready in that space for your food service to take that over, just consider that, because, you know, off-premise caterers, this is what they know how to do. And I feel like the reputable ones will really work hard to do it right and clean and take care of your guests. So just a thought.
I think that's a great point. And again, just it's a time where we can look at things differently with a different lens and a different perspective. But again, we, like Tasha was saying, it's a great opportunity to get creative. We can still do events. They may look different, but we can really still have a lot of fun and deliver what we go back to, you know, why we love to serve and we want to create memorable experiences. And we still have the opportunity to do that, whether it's in person, hybrid, virtual, or some other component. We can really get creative there as well. So I think as we kind of wrap up, and I'm going to stop the recording in a second, but we can stay on and continue our dialogue. But, you know, we're all in, go back to pretty much every time, we're all in the same storm. We're sometimes on different boats, but we're all in the same storm and we're all navigating this together. But I think it's going to be really helpful for us to keep reaching out to each other, to keep lifting each other up during this time. I think those have been the most meaningful calls and text and emails that I've received that are from clients and partners, just lifting each other up during this time. So we need to continue to do that. And again, thank you to SGMP for bringing this group together today and to lead the industry conversation through this. I think this is so important. And I think as you look to June luncheon, I think it's what's next, because this is evolving. Every day is different. Every 5 minutes is different of what the challenges are ahead. So again, I would say continue to lead the effort in this dialogue and this conversation. So I'm just going to stop the record, but let's stick around if anybody wants to have any additional comments or conversation. And if anybody needs to jump off, you're welcome to do so as well. So thank you.